Welcome, superhero. Your heart is in the right place. I am Bridget Fonger. I wrote a book called Superhero of Love, Heal Your Broken Heart and Then Go Save the World. In this second season of the Superhero of Love podcast, I'm gathering tips from thought leaders about how we can unpandemicize our hearts, heal the effects of the pandemic on our hearts, and love and be loved more than ever before. So, let's get this heart party started. Welcome.
Welcome, everybody. This is one of my most exciting interviews ever for the Superhero of Love podcast. This is the first podcast after a very long break. I did over 100 episodes and haven't done one since August of 2020. Took what I thought was going to be a little break, and here we are. And we're out of the gate doing one of the most exciting interviews with Ian White. If you don't know who Ian White is, he is the founder and CEO of Australian Bush Flower Essences. And, excuse me, I'm recovering from a flu, but may I just say, I'm going to insert a comment here because it's very important. 2 hours ago, I received two packages from whom? Australian Bush Flower Essences. I ordered a few days ago. They come super fast. Ian is in Australia and they ship right from Australia. And I ordered some essences. And then right after I hit the order button, I was like, wait, I've got this lingering cough. Why did I not explore what there is in Australian Bush Flower Essences to help me with my cough? And I just took that remedy 2 hours ago. And I just want you to know that I'm already like miraculously improving. That is who Ian White is, the miracle maker, the founder and CEO, and the essence of Australian Bush Flower Essences. Welcome, Ian, to the Superhero of Love podcast.
Great, and it's great to be kicking it off after your little sojourn. So, yeah, very honored to be your first person back.
Yes, it's very exciting. So, let me tell, I'm going to let you tell your story about how you arrived at this place where you are offering this gift of, I say, huge gift of love to the earth and what you do. Excuse me. We're going to hear these little coughs every once in a while. I discovered you only a few months ago. In September of 2022, I was introduced to Fringed Violet. Someone suggested buying it in my spiritual community, and I bought it, and my head basically exploded with bliss. And I was there for yours forever. It has spread throughout our spiritual community. I had the honor of actually giving a first dose to somebody from one of my bottles. I was like, you've got to try this. And I watched his head basically explode and watched his, I don't see auras and things like that, but I literally felt like his head exploded into rainbows from Fringed Violets. And then from there, I've been exploring all the bush flower essences. So I want you to know that it's been a short period of time that I've known about you, but I have two of your books. Ta-da! And your books are so exquisitely beautiful. For those of you that are watching the video, you saw that, but I'm going to post in the podcast notes the covers of your books so that people see them and are able to buy them and explore them. But thank you for being the gift that you are on this planet. And I wanted to share you. I don't know that I would have started the podcast this quickly back into the gate, but I wanted to get the word out about you to people that don't know. So I wanted you to be on. I have read portions of your books. I've read pieces of your website and seen some videos and things like that. But I don't want to say your story, even though I've read it a few different times. I would love for you to say the story. And I want to say, may I just preface this by saying because I think that a lot of people know flower essences. My relationship, I think, is a common one with flower essences, which is that the only essence that I had in my house when I discovered you was the rescue remedy from Bach flower essences. And I had had a couple of great experiences over the course of my life long ago, but I never really dove into them like I have dived into yours. And so I would love for you to also explain how the Australian flowers are different from the English flowers, but also your amazing story of how you came to this journey.
Well, really, it is a very long story. It goes back 5 generations. So my great grandmother was in Europe, and Australia had a gold rush similar to the one in California around the same time. So she decided she was going to come and work as we in Australia would call them herbalists as opposed to herbalists in America. So she came across to work as an herbalist on the gold fields. You know, you can imagine treating with mines collapsing, alcoholism, poor nutrition, etc. She would have had a field day. And my great-grandmother and grandmother were some of the first white people in Australia to look at the medicinal properties of Australian plants, because a lot of the Indigenous people got wiped out, especially around the Sydney area, smallpox, influenza, and theirs was an oral tradition. So a lot of that knowledge was lost. And for any of your listeners who might have been to Sydney, I grew up about an hour northwest of Sydney, and my parents' property and also my grandmother's property, who lived next door, we backed onto national park. So as a young boy, I would spend as much time as I could with my grandmother, going on bushwalks, collecting the plants she was using. She'd point out the various ones, what they were. And unfortunately, unknown to me and the rest of the family, she was a very heavy chain smoker, and her body was riddled with cancer when I was born, but she kept it at bay with 3 native plants plus phyta lacca, one that grows from North America, and also sorrel. And she went traveling off to Europe when I was 9, and she lost the luggage, which had all the herbs, which kept everything in check. By the time my dad could get the herbs to her, the cancer had taken its toll, the stress of traveling. She was flown back in a coma and didn't come out of that coma. And none of her knowledge was written down, like her and my great grandmother. There's just a few little books that we've got, like formulas and a few things. So my memory is going through the bush, her pointing out the plants, but I don't remember which plant did specifically what. Just that in the bush, and for all our American listeners, when we're in Australia, the bush means wilderness area. So it doesn't, in fact, I was going to do one of my books, and the American publishers didn't want to be connected to George W. And he said, no, we can't call it bush essences.
Oh my God.
So I have a bad connotation in the country. So anyway, in fact, when I was a young boy, I used to, I'd wait till my dad go to work. Now, my dad, he was the black sheep of the family. He was a pharmacist, but he also used herbs as well. So if you go into his pharmacy and you had, say, digestive upset, rather than giving you some allopathic medication, he would mix up a herbal blend for you. So he was hard to convince. So I'd wait till he would go off to work, and then I'd go to my mum and I'd be doubled up in pain, pleading that I wanted to go to school. And she said, oh, no, you seem far too sick. You better spend the day with your grandmother. And, and she'd come home, after work and go to pick me up, and she'd ask my grandmother, oh, how was Ian? And she'd, oh, gradually he got better during the day. And I'd make a complete recovery. I think my grandmother enjoyed me having around her, and we'd, spend the day in the bush and making extracts and tinctures, having a great time. So, I ended up going off doing a science degree at university, got very sick traveling in India. And so I started working with herbal medicine to rebuild my health, got involved in Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, all of that. So I got to my final semester, and I realized all the things I was really interested in were natural therapy. So I then went and studied naturopathy. And this was in the late 70s when I started practicing. And at the time, you mentioned the bark flowers from England. They were the only flower essence. And I was probably more of a homeopath. But I liked the fact that he was something simple, safe, anyone could use. Families could use on their kids, even though they had no medical training. And I thought, why isn't anyone working with Australian plants? Because, I've known from my grandmother, but no one was. So, I used to run some workshops. I used to prescribe them. I was a little disappointed because sometimes I knew I had the right remedy. My patients say, oh, I can't tell if anything's happened or what have you. Anyway, when I was a student, I'd shared a house with this very charismatic young man. He was early 30s. He'd converted the whole backyard to edible weeds. He'd been brought up in an organic farm. He was very successful, in business, great group of friends. And he came to see me. And I'd been in practice for a couple of years. And he said, look, I've been diagnosed with bowel cancer. They're going to operate in a couple of weeks. And I'd like you if you could just hold a healing circle because of my interest in meditation and what have you. But at the night before they operate, just to send a bit of good energy to me. And, I was totally shocked of all people and such a young age, like early 30s. So all our friends were mutually shocked. So we brought them all over the night before Jim was operated on. And we did meditation, directing energy. And when they operated, they found out the cancer spread everywhere through his body. There was nothing they could do. So I continued the healing circle weekly in my home. And we opened up to anyone who needed healing. And now Jim died about 6 months later. And shortly after his death, in the meditations of the healing circle, I started getting pictures of plants, told where to find them and what their healing qualities were. And if I didn't know the flower, there'd be a little caption underneath with the botanic name. So I was, just present to me on a platter. And I'm usually more very gut feeling, not very visual in my meditation. So it was great to have these very strong things. And say one of my flowers I worked with was called flannel flower. And they told me to go and make up in this place. And I thought, I've been there. There's never seen flannel flowers. I went there. There's massive flannel flowers everywhere. So they're very, very clear. So for about 2 years, and my practice was established, I was making up a remedy, giving it to my patients. And there was a synchronicity that if I made a remedy in the morning, patients I might be booked in that afternoon or evening all needed the remedy. So I thought, well, that's a good omen, but also gave them the opportunity to see how they worked. And I was so excited because they worked very powerfully, a bit like your friends, head of explaining the rainbows. So for 2 years, I was just out in the bush every available opportunity and, researching, using the essences on patients. I gave them to friends who were doctors and acupuncturists, naturopaths, so see if they could get the same results. And after the 2 years, I was very happy. I started publishing information. And at that point, I thought, oh, they're just for Australian people. They're Australian flowers. And then we had people in the States, in South America, Europe, hearing about them, ordering them and getting equally as good results. So I realized we're very much just a global village here, and there's, plants can work in Australia, can work in other parts.
Right.
Well, yeah.
God, that's beautiful. Okay. I hadn't read that story about that after Jim died, that the downloads were coming so strong.
Yeah.
I did read
9 flowers now. So, they come from all parts of Australia. Like America, it's a very large continent, and, we've got alpine area, we've got, deserts, not like Sahara sand, but just rocky desert, very arid. We've got tropical areas. So they come from all parts. And I'm the one who goes and collects and makes them. So we've got about over 20 staff, but I'm the one who goes actually still. I've been doing the essences for over 35 years now. So I'm still the one who goes out and prepares and makes them. But I'll bring all the concentrates back to our offices where we have our manufacturing.
I want to encourage listeners to go look at your videos too, because I have a vivid memory of one of your videos where you say, I had never seen this flower and I finally saw the flower and here it is. It was just like, oh my God, hallelujah, like angels singing joyously behind you, it was just, so you make really great videos too. I just want to encourage people to go see them. I want to talk about the shift that you talk about in 1996 and how your process goes. You said that you used to tune in and listen to the plant, right? I have I do a lot of flower design and I love working with flowers. And so I have a sense of listening to them also and saying, no, I don't want to be here. I want to be over there, or, that kind of thing. So I related to that. But then you went to a whole other level, which is, you said, I now find myself being able to actually merge into and become the plant. Sometimes at the completion of making the essence, I would merge into the mother tincture as well. So can you tell us about that and what that's like and the experience of the how you came to this place?
Yeah, sure. So flower essence as a modality goes back many thousands of years. Most indigenous cultures have a tradition of collecting the flowers, putting them in water, or collecting the dew of the flowers. In fact, the earliest records go back about 3,000 years to on papyrus sheets in Egypt. And the earliest European recorded history is Hildegard von Bingen, who I'm sure many of the listeners will know. And she was very famous, now recently made a saint in the Catholic Church. She was an abbess, ran a monastery in just about an hour west of Frankfurt today. And she would get the nuns to put out muslin sheets overnight on the flowers, and they'd absorb the dew of the flowers, which would be collected the next morning. They'd get the sheets, they'd wring out the dew and use that to treat emotional imbalances. And Paracelsus also used to collect the dew of flowers. Now, Hildegard von Bingen, she was working in the 12th century, Paracelsus the 16th. And then we had, indigenous people, including in Australia, Brazil, India, etc., using them. A lot of that knowledge seems to be lost. Now, there was an English homeopath called Edward Bark. He was a medical doctor as well. And he, used to hang out in the bars, speak to the gypsies, getting information from them. Rudolf Steiner, went to some of his lectures, got some ideas about remedies from him. And he started bringing back to public awareness for what flower essences are. And that was back in the 1930s. He died in 36. So he would boil some of the buds, the flowers, or he would float them in water, simulating the production of the dew. So here in Australia, it's much warmer than England. We don't need to boil them. It gives more of a herbal, heavy effect. So I use his method of flowers collected, placed in a bowl of water, and the sun releases the vibrational healing quality of the flower, releases it into the water. It takes about 2 hours for that process under ideal conditions like clear skies, sun. That water is then diluted a number of times till we get the point where you get the remedy that you take. And it's a liquid form, so you take 7 drops under your tongue morning and night. And so the flowers are picked, and, I don't go to areas where there's roads or pollution nearby. It's very pristine environments I'll go to make the remedies. So when the flowers are in that bowl, I've been able to merge in, become that water which has been imbibed with the vibrational quality of that particular flower, like sundew, which you do find growing in North America as well. It's Drosera spatulata. Homeopaths know it. They use it for whooping cough. It's a red base, and it's got a very long stem, the tiny little flower just hovering around. So it's very good for people who aren't very grounded, a bit vague and dreamy. It could also be, for example, after anesthetic or too much drugs where someone's, a bit spacey. But being the mother tincture, I was suddenly that flower, and I was floating up the very top of the mother, and then I'd be very grounded in the bottom, for example. And so experiences like that. So it allowed me to really know what, on a deeper level, what that quality of that particular flower has. And every flower has a healing quality. Some express it more fully than others. And when I'm making the remedy, sometimes I've got information meditation, which has led me to it. Or sometimes I'm looking at a book and one just jumps up and I know, I've got to make that one. So when I get to the area, I sit, ground myself. Sometimes I might be traveling many hours to get to that location. And then I'll draw the flower. I'll meditate, then I'll draw the flower, because you can observe the detail of the flower. And there's a term called doctrine of signatures, where the shape, the color of the flower are clues as to, the healing quality of it. And then I'll meditate again, but this time I'm communicating with what we call the diva. It's almost like the guardian angel that little babies have that with the flower. So communicating, well, what's the healing quality? And asking permission that, can I pick you later on? But the flowers sometimes say, oh, finally, thank heavens, I've had the healing quality so long, and finally someone's aware of what I'm here on the planet to offer to humanity, you know. So provided you come with that reverence and respect, they're very happy to be involved and to impart that healing gift to us.
That's what I'm talking about. You're bringing us love, right? Like this is like untapped sources of love in nature that you're bringing to us. And I have to just bring listeners' attention back to the books too. Please get the books, because how you just heard Ian talking about the flowers, like it's like poetry. You want to read about every single flower, right? Like first you go to the books and you're like, okay, I have this thing and I need it solved. Then you read those, right? And then you're like, I don't even have this thing that this other flower does, but oh my God, I've got to read about it. Because it's like you're talking, it's like you're writing up. And I love that you sketch them too. And I somehow had missed that. But it feels like you meet this very, very special person and you draw their portrait and then you write poetry about them. And through all of that, it's like we meet the flower, like the soul of the flower through you, which is extraordinary. And then it's balanced by I guess I feel like we meet the Deva that you were talking about, right? But then you also have in the back there is a huge glossary of symptoms and physical situations or emotional situations or spiritual situations, and you answer how you can address them each. So I just want to acknowledge you that like you have this very grounded information and then this exalted spiritual, like it's a spiritual experience reading your books. And then but it's also very grounded. I'm just blown away by you.
Thank you. This is great. I'm going to sign you up as my cheerleader. Absolutely. Yes.
But it's true.
And look, I think for me, it's, want to get the information out there. I mean, my goal is for every household have the essences so the children get brought up with the essences, because I'm sure for anyone listening to this, what was your childhood like? Imagine if, your parents had known about flower essences to help you some of the more challenging times that you went through. It would have made life so much easier for the children. And then it's like, you've mentioned fringe violet, one specific flower. And it's a great one, especially for the young children now. Everyone born this millennium has at least 1, 2 in their birth date. And I studied numerology at the same time I studied my naturopathy. And every patient I do their chart, because straight away in 15 seconds, you can see their strengths and challenges. And, the ideal is to have 2 2s in your birth date. But if you're a female, 1 2 is adequate. If you have 2 2s or more, you're going to be like a psychic sponge. And you just think of, anyone born last century, 2022, I mean, they're going to have at least 3 2s, let alone if they were born on the 22nd of the 2nd, 2022. I mean, when you have that many 2s, you're picking up energy so readily, like a psychic sponge. You can go into a room and someone's feeling sad and you'll start feeling sad. If they're doing body work, doing a bit of a massage on someone's shoulders, if that person's got sore shoulders, they'll get the sore shoulders just from touching them. So the fringe violet is that nice little protection, stops you being that psychic sponge. So you keep your energy intact and don't get drained so readily. And that could be also with allergies. If you're very sensitive to, pollen, dust in the air, maybe certain foods, fringe violet will decrease that overly sensitivity that you have.
Well, now I understand, because I have 3 2s in my thing. And I was only just, I'm going to read a line from your book. Many cultures have predicted that 1,000 years of peace will soon envelop the planet, and next century, meaning this century, numerologically, it can be seen that everyone will be born with at least a single 2 in their birthday. So I'm interested in that, enveloping the planet with peace. And when I read that, I was like, I have to have him on the podcast, because I feel like your essences. Here I am with my 3 2s, the fringe violet, but so many of the essences I could go on and on about how you've helped me. But
can I add one that I think people might be really interested in? It's called the pink flannel flower. It's a tiny little flower. When I made it, it hadn't been seen flowering for 40 years. And, a couple of years ago, we had horrendous fires on most parts of Australia. And the smoke is what activates the seeds of this flower, and it can stay dormant for such a long time. But the pink flannel flower, its qualities are gratitude. And it's a really lovely heart remedy. It's got the beautiful pink, and color therapy, pink is love. But the children coming down this millennium, they've come here to heal through their capacity to give love and love. But, like they come with these huge open heart chakras, and then they get exposed to some of the not so nice aspects of humanity. And it's quite easy for their heart chakras just to close down. So for young children under the age of 5, the pink flannel flower just keeps their heart chakras open. It works on everyone's heart chakra, but it's very specific for these children because they come here with such a strong goal to sort of bring about healing and through love. And for the rest of us, just having that sense of gratitude and feeling really joyful just floods in life energy to us, and that love vibration into us as well. It's like seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses. It's a beautiful essence.
Wow. Okay, so that could move us toward being enveloped by peace.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we're going, we talk about the dark ages, in the Middle Ages being the dark ones. I think on a spiritual level, that's where we're coming through now, like we're dealing with some pretty deep negativity, but we're in the process of coming out, and so many people are here to make a change. I think it's the last throes of that darkness. Hopefully, we're in the process of moving forward. And there's still a bit of work to be done, however, unfortunately.
But these essences can help us. But I'm hearing hope in your voice. Do you feel hopeful that we are? Yes.
We've got so many spiritual beings who are working with us, and so much love and energy flooding down the planet. We just got to really avail ourselves to it. And what we've seen, the amount of despair and fear and everything that's been bombarded on us in the last few years. I mean, to not get caught up in that and still, stay really focused and not close down and go into despair.
Right. And there's an essence for all of that. There's an essence for each of those little threads. Like I was just reading earlier about the essence for the preconceived notions that we have. You were talking about, like the O.J. Simpson trial, assumption of guilt, or a child saying, no, I don't like blue foods.
I've never had blue foods, but I don't like it. Yes. It's like rechanging all the filters. Yeah. Being open to lots of paradigm change. In fact, I can remember once being in a party in the Bay Area, and there was, people there, and one fellow, his hand just went through the wall. He was leaning against, and his hand went through the wall, and then came out, and there was a stunned silence, because you're not supposed to do that. It's like, that's a physical wall. Or Stuart Wilde telling me about how he did experiments of teleporting himself, from England to United States. Now, you go into an airport and tell people, hey, you can teleport. You don't have to queue up and, pay all this money, and they'll lock you away as a crazy person. That's there, but because mass consciousness is so different outside that realm, it's just like changing the filters so we can be more open to it. We had all the 18th centuries, all those European sailors going into what they called the New World. Their sailing boats were so alien that they reported sometimes being in the harbor for 3 days, and they could see all the native people going about their business, and it was like they were invisible. And then something had happened, like someone's on the canoe paddling out, and suddenly they crash into the boat and go, what's this? And then suddenly all the canoes, everyone comes out, because it was so foreign to them. We just filter out what's not within our belief systems. There's so much stimulus coming in where we've got filters to only let in what reinforces what we already perceive the world to be.
So it's such a good metaphor. And can you say what the remedy is?
Freshwater mangrove.
Okay.
Which is a fun one to make, because it grows in the tropics in Australia, and to make that, you've got to go into the water. And also in the water, you've got to be very careful that there's not these crocodiles, which can be up to 5 meters long, and they can run at 30 miles an hour on land, but they prefer the water. So, like they're very clever animals. So I've got to wade in. I'm sort of, that and the red lily, which is a sacred lotus. I've got to go out into the water to make them. So I'm always thinking, okay, guys, you'll see me out here. Make sure I'm protected here to get this essence.
Right. So you feel like you're going in with a Davik army and they're like,
you got to use common sense as well. I think there's a couple of times my wife has said to me, I don't want to be a widow. Now you be very careful going near the edge there.
I want to go back to thank you for the freshwater mangrove as the solution for that that kind of thinking. That kind of thinking, I've been doing a workshop since the fall, which is called Unpandemicize Your Heart. And it's, like looking at all the places in our heart that have been affected and kind of beaten up by the pandemic that we haven't been conscious of. And I was inspired to do the workshop because I'm kind of surrounded by a lot of people that have harder edges as a result of the pandemic, like we were just talking about those beliefs that like even stronger beliefs, right? Like the lines in the sand are so deep and things are black and white and gray left the building, right? Yeah. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the pandemic and healing our hearts from that, because we all have that collective kind of pain point, especially if we haven't been conscious, which is another reason why I love your books, is because you can go through and unjudgmentally look at yourself and say, oh, I actually have that. I have that thing that he's saying, and I've never seen that piece of my heart. Thank you. Let me get the remedy for that kind of thing. Like you have a way of taking these pain points, bringing them up to the light, and no shame, no shame. It's just, this is what's so I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, like you mentioned the combination from the Bach flowers called Rescue Remedy. We have 21 different combinations, trying to make it very so someone can go into a health food store or pharmacy and, relationship. I'm having a lot of problems with my partner right now. I'm having difficulty dealing with my children, and that's a good one. So during the pandemic, we brought out one called Boost. And Boost is there's 8 different flowers in there. And men seem to be affected more with COVID, and there was a lot of impact on the lungs. Now, in Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, they've been observing human behavior for thousands of years, and they've made that correlation between certain illnesses and what the emotion which can trigger it. So for lungs, it's very much related to grief and sadness. Now, I think most people hold on to some level of grief and sadness, but men probably more so than women. So the fact that there are more men getting it, more impact on the lungs, okay, straight away you think, okay, if you're holding on to a lot of grief and sadness and you do get exposed to that, you're probably going to have a worse time. So let's do something to help release the grief and sadness. Also, the level of fear that was, really bombarded on us. And so people getting very anxious and fearful, that's... So we have a remedy in there dealing with that fear and anxiety. And of course, there's concern that, I've got elderly parents, I don't want them going to a supermarket. They might get exposed to someone who's ill, and there's a lot of concern from that fear, especially then as caretakers for children or elderly parents. So and sense of hope and optimism. It was, it was a black night of the soul. The world was going to end, So there's remedies from that, and just being a little bit more playful and not so grim around it all as well. So there's really a combination of ones. There's remedies for worry, so right. And also has a balancing effect on you. And there's a lovely flower. It's a tree. It's in flower now, brilliant red. And not only the flowers red, but the new branches and growth stems are all red too. And having a very strong impact around that whole thymus immune system. So that's in there for boosting people's immune system. But really dealing with, a lot of that fear and grief and things like that, which have been impacting us. And there's warrior in there, which is a great one for the heart. So, we know both the jab and the impact of the illness had a lot of impact on heart. So strengthening the heart as well.
I can't even believe I skipped over. I'm going to buy it as soon as we hang up, actually. I can't even believe I skipped over it somehow. But that's what I was looking for, is boosting my immune system, and got a few other things, but didn't get boost. I'm so excited. I want to say also, when you were talking about releasing grief, I just wanted to share that, and I want to say, if anybody listens to this and then they start buying Australian bushflower essences, I recommend that you have a little diary, because I wish I had written down what I was experiencing, through all of these essences. Like, there was one where I didn't realize until day 4 of taking it, that, because I rarely have nightmares, but for 3 nights in a row, I had these, just like, kind of like every time I woke up, even, it was nightmares, right? And I can't remember what it was that I was taking. And then I became conscious of it on the 4th day. And the 4th night I didn't have them. And I was like, oh, is it because I'm conscious of it? Or is it because I worked through but I just want to say that you can have these, like, don't be afraid of the emotions that come up and things that come up as a result of these essences, because they go through. It's like a river, right?
There's a self-adjusting mechanism for these. Like I mentioned, that I was predominantly a homeopath when I first started the research in the flowers. In homeopathy, you can get some severe aggravations if you give the remedy even though it's the right remedy, for too long, or maybe you got the wrong potency. The beauty of the bush essence is they're self-adjusting. So you can give them and know you're not going to create something the person's not able to deal with. And let's say they're relieved, they've got a lot of grief. It'll work to what point the person's able to release it without just, a cathartic release they can't cope with. So there's that lovely self-adjusting mechanism coming in through there.
Yeah. It's fun to be aware of it, though. It's like, oh, it's that essence. It's really working. And then and then you're conscious of the relief, right? It's like, oh, something has truly shifted in me. It's a miracle. It's miraculous.
Because one of the nice things too about people is that, let's say you got a particular symptom, physical, emotional. Once it's healed, we forget about it. So sometimes, like, you think, where was I when I started this essence? What's going on? I got, physically, emotionally, etc. And then when you're finishing, oh, gee, that didn't do much. And then you look at where you're at now. Oh, no, I don't have those headaches anymore. No, I'm not, like, not having insomnia or whatever it might be. Like, I think it's a healthy thing. We forget our problems after they've been resolved, but it's good to keep a note of what has actually happened.
Way more articulately than I did why I want them to do a book, right? Like, if you wrote it, then you're conscious of it. It's like, oh my God, this is a miracle. I started at point A, I'm at point B, and it's all about the essence. God, yeah. So cool.
I love hearing your stories too. And, we greatly appreciate people taking the time to jot down their experience of the essence. And we have 2 of our staff who list the information under what essence the people are taking, or what different condition. It could be, like the sadness, or it could be the immune system, and so we'll classify it under both ways.
Yeah. You've mentioned kids a lot, which I am so, oh my God, that would be such a great result of this podcast if even 5 parents started giving their children essences, right? Oh my God, what a miracle that would be. But there's one also, because I have a lot of friends who have teenagers, and can you talk about adolescence?
Sure. So normally we would put 5 remedies in one of our combinations. So, like, it could be self-esteem, it could be abundance, it could be purifying. And individually, there are 69 flowers. There was a very good argument to put all 69 flowers in for the teenagers. So it was very hard to say, well, what's the priority? So, we got remedies in there dealing with being true to yourself, because peer pressure is so strong in teenagers. They want to be part of the group. They want to be accepted and loved. So the rest of the group might want to do something, and that person says, no, it doesn't feel good for me. But rather than say, no, I don't want to do it, and then risk being ostracized by the group, they go and do it. So there's a remedy to be strong and true to yourself. Say, look, no, I don't want to do that. And, there's a lot there for self-esteem as well, because that's a huge one for teenagers. And they're very self-conscious of themselves. Oh, I'm too tall, I'm too short, my nose is too small, or my ears are too big, so there's one for that, like feeling embarrassment about the body and more accepting of the physical body, especially if they got acne. I mean, that's devastating for them, and I had terrible acne because my diet was so atrocious growing up. But like, I'd be embarrassed to be with my girlfriend because I thought, embarrassed for her for being with, so I think the Billy Goat Plum is for that letting go of shame, embarrassment, and that ties in nicely with the remedy for that self-confidence, self-esteem, self-love. And there's Red Helmet for that rebelliousness, which which can be good, helping break away from the parents. But then, you're seeing teachers, parents, bosses, anyone in authority as being the enemy. And, you don't come off best when you can, having problems with the police or things like that. So that rebelliousness. So there's also that sense of not belonging. Some people feel very lonely as teenagers. Like, sometimes I ask in workshops, when you're in high school, how many people felt really, part of the group, part of it? And a lot of people put their hands up, I felt really isolated and alone, very lonely. So, there's a remedy dealing with that as well. And bottle brush, because there's a lot of change going on during that adolescent time. So coping with change and not having the break away a little bit more from parents. So there's, quite a few remedies in the adult. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for explaining all that and how beautiful that is. And the bottom line is that all the essences are that well thought out and that well crafted. It's so exquisite. One of the ones I was drawn to, which it's possible I did it too early, but I was just drawn to it and I had to have it, was Solar Logos. Yeah. And then I did Isis, because I saw after I bought it, it was said, and then you do Isis for a week. And I was like, oh, okay. But okay. That's one where I wish I had been writing down what was happening. I felt that was transformative. Anyway, nobody cares about my experience of what it was, but can you talk?
Oh, they do. All your listeners want to know what's happening for you, I'm sure. Yeah. But it's great for people just watching this who don't know much about my company. So we have the Australian bushflower essences, which are the 69 flowers that go all around the country making. That's one range. And then we have 3 spiritual ranges of essences. And the Soul Logos you mentioned, Isis, there's a Gaia, and there's also a rainbow. Therefore, in essences in what we call the divine presence essences, very much crown-centered remedies. So Solar Logos, it's a creative energy from the heart of the central sun, or heart of spirit, which goes out through the cosmos, initiating change and activation, which is what's going through at the moment. And look, I'm not saying it's the best, but certainly it's the deepest acting of all the bush of all the flower essence I've worked with. It's incredibly deep acting. And if you could imagine that the analogy to us, as you might have a chalice or, a cup, and there's water in there, but there's a bit of sediment. So you're getting all this energy coming through the Soul Logos, these golden rays coming in, and it's just like bringing up all the debris over and pushing it over the edge of the thing. And that's that spiritual blockages, predominantly, anything that we've come here. So clearing all that debris to allow our higher self to come in more fully. And look, it's to make this essence, it was made in Glastonbury in England. And there's a trans medium there I work with, Sally Pullinger. And we had Melchizedek, who was spiritually present there as an anchoring, because it's such a high energy coming in. Normally the Soul Logos energy, it will come close to the earth, and there's like a grid around the earth made of white light. And it because the Soul Logos is too strong to come directly through. So it hits there and it's converted into that white light, filters down a little bit more gently. So when you're taking the Soul Logos, it's like full blast coming in, and we've had people said, oh, It was amazing, but I felt I had to go to bed for a week. I was just lying there. I was just processing so much. Now, not everyone has that experience. In fact, we normally say take Gaia first. It grounds you, so it doesn't. You can take in more of that soul logos energy. Yeah, and same with Isis. I mean, my wife and I, we went to Egypt, and I'd never been drawn there. We came across the Isis temple, and then we went to back to the UK. I was having a session, with Sally, and suddenly there was this started with this incantation, very unworldly, and this beautiful love energy. It wasn't speaking in any earthly language. And I was told this was Isis. She was coming through to bless my work, but also that she wanted to create an essence with me, which we created the next day. So her presence was there. I thought it might go. I didn't really know what would take place. It had all the bowls, and she came through. The love energy was so intense. I just had tears pouring, thinking, we're actually capturing this. This is such a healing gift.
Oh.
And her message is that, like she represents the divine mother, the divine feminine. And she says, give me your pain, give me your suffering, I'll give you love and courage. So she just wants us to, when we're going through a bad time, give it up to her, and she'll just flood us with love and courage. And that's what this essence is all about. It's such a nurturing, lovely remedy. It's a pure love vibration.
Yeah. Pure love. Wow. Thank you I feel like I was there with you at that point. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to keep going with a podcast after you tell a story.
And we've done workshops on the bush essences and also on the different spiritual ranges. And when we do it's the divine presence, that's over 4 weeks, and there's each week we take the remedy for that week, and then we all as a meditate together on it. And I play a blessing she gave before we did an Isis program. I think we had about 1,000 people around the world doing it. And so this was her blessing, and it was just this lovely, her singing and coming through. Like, as I said, I thought it was just, it's a goddess, it's some symbology, and, like it's just a history. It's not, but she was a real spiritual being. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for
play her message, and you hear her chanting and singing. It's a fantastic one.
Yes. And I'm so glad because that's on my list to have you talk about, is the courses that you offer. So go to your website, right? And you can always see what your next course is that you're offering, but do you want to say what's up next for you?
Yeah, well, during all the lockdown and restrictions in travel, we built a recording studio. So we recorded all the workshops online, and we play them on Zoom, but the recording would be much higher quality. So all our workshops, except one which is kinesiology, which I teach people how to muscle test and show how they can tie in with the bush essences. So I need to be there, making sure you're testing the right way. But all the others are available as online webinars that you can do at your own time. So we have a lot of workshops on the essences, and then we have specific themes. There's one on women, one on children, etc. And then we have all the spiritual range that you can do online webinars with. Just the nice thing about, I think, COVID was, like so many people were able to, we could just learn, even though, I'm in Australia, someone's on the other side of the world, we can still connect and learn. We don't have to be physically next to each other to do that.
Right. That's a beautiful thing that came out of this for sure. Oh, I need to ask you a personal question, which is, I love looking at people's quotes, because for my books, I'm always like, I'm so careful about choosing the perfect little quotes and whatever. So I pay attention to every quote that any author puts in a book, because I just think, oh my God, that's a little jewel that you're handing us. And you had a Ramtha quote in there. And I studied with Ramtha like over 30 years ago. And I'm just like, it was so shocking to see a Ramtha quote in one of your books. Did you study with Ramtha, or do you know?
Yeah, I did some, she came out to Australia a few times and did some information there. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. That was just
I think there's even like I wasn't a Rajneesh follower, but there was a lovely quote for him, so I put one of his in there. I think that's great how all these people have just come up and encapsulated something that's really what this essence is all about. The flower essence is about how it blends in. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love them all. I just happened to, you just never see Ramtha quotes. So I was just like, what? And it's been over 30 years for me. And so it was just like, wow, blew my mind. Okay. So I feel like, oh, I have to ask this question though. So I told a couple of people that of friends who are huge fans of yours in our community. You have a lot of fans. And I said, do you have any questions that you want to make sure that I ask Ian? And she said, what? And this is like, this, I should have come up with this question. Her question was, what is love to you?
Sometimes I'll start the day, or if I'm going through a bit more of a challenging situation, if I can just take myself, step back, take a breath and say, how would love respond to this situation? Rather than even being a black-eyed Susan reactive and getting angry or whatever it might be, but like, okay, how would love, which way am I going to respond here?
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So it really helps that human part just to sort of, be not so negative with the humanity and our patterning and conditioning and
I love that. I love that. Thank you. I think that's a perfect question to end on, unless there's anything else that I missed asking you that you want to say.
No, it's been a great pleasure for me chatting with you. And
oh my God, you don't even know. I'm one of your greatest fans. So thank you. And I'm going to get this out there and spread the word because these have truly changed my life and will continue to change my life. And I'm so excited. And I talk about you all the time, but it's better to have you talk about you because you're way more articulate than me.
Well, now the next step for you is you're going to have to come out to Australia and see some of these flowers in real life and see them. Yeah.
I would love to. It would be my greatest pleasure to meet you in person. Oh my God. But thank you for your generosity and spirit.
Thank you. And I want to be with you when you see fringe violet growing for the first time. You see it. And yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Bridget. It's been a great pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for coming, superhero. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, tell your entire universe about it. Fly over to my Superhero of Love website too to stay in touch in every way. And thanks for coming.